So, walking up and down this track, aside the dead bodies. Aside is my favourite word. Why to stay aside? And why turn my camera on again? Because this is not a weblog, vlog, blog. In fact, the perfect incident occurred. Right, why go up and down here? Because my jalopy's back there. And the only regret I have is if you have, well, any valuables, never mind a computer, even though it's treble backed up. Even here, I discovered yesterday, Christmas week, I was the victim of a crime. My furniture's been stolen from a little shack in the middle of nowhere. They'll say this is some lovely, idyllic, rural place. Nope. That's why I want to leave Britain. Anyway, so an incident. Now this needs to be described carefully, and I am speaking with a lisp. I should apply for a job with Radio 4. Something happened. It's irrelevant. It'll be fixed. This morning, so there's a man who last year, 2020, oh no, it's the year before now. I've known him quite a long time, and got to know him better. We spent plenty of time. He, like me, was the one person in the area off on his bicycle a lot. He's 70 plus, very fit and skinny for 70 plus, and worldly, well travelled. We spent a certain amount of 2020, when you could, sat in a cafe, and we had more or less the same attitude, which was not to talk about it, just to live on a bit, exercise a lot. Anyway, so like me, for his own reasons, he wanted to travel abroad. He's been vaccinated. He's never even mentioned it. I mean, at the end of the day, see, this comes down to only one question. Will they let the Corbynite approach be? I believe, now unlike all the rest of them, I would like anything that's out there in the public domain, anything not in my little bubble, I would like it to be accurate. I think most of them don't believe in fact-checking and extreme caution when it comes to second-hand information. So it is said that Mr. Corbyn, when asked whether or not he'd been jabbed or was going to be, when the jab first came out, he replied, his private medical business is his private medical business. And I believe that's the best answer to everything. That should be the way that a respectful, thoughtful, intelligent, philosophical society, which we're meant to be, and almost all the people towards the top of it, or the people that would call themselves middle class, would say it is. But we aren't at all. It's a very good report I was listening to this morning about how we're only halfway, we're only about mid-range in the official worldwide standard on new information, education standards in respect of being able to discriminate accurate or inaccurate information. We're not that wise, which means the parents weren't that wise either and didn't parent their kids properly. But let's forget about all opinion as to what has happened in any aspect of human existence in this country. All that matters is fact. So, perfect example of the fact of the thing. There's my acquaintance, and he's with somebody else. They're both similar age, and they were relaxed and wandering around, and the somebody else offers my hand. I'd met him once before. It so doesn't matter who this person is in any way. It's just an archetype, that's the point. And then the conversation turned at some point to, the matters you'll hear about in the media. And people cannot listen. When I said, quite rightly, much of it, I have a specific take on the relative is the most important word in this, relative harm that can be done by a new pathogen that's, by the look of it, evolved, or certainly evolved into something less harmful. And in any event, cry as they may, we're only talking about a 2 or 3 times pneumonia in terms of relative effect throughout the population. Right, end of subject. But the subject, when you say things like, "Oh, but you only have your vote," it seems infantile, almost childish, and naive, and rather stupid. Because anybody that understands politics a bit knows that there's a 5-year cycle in place, blah blah blah. Even though that's the most absurd law ever. I thought the Tories were meant to be doing away with that because it can be manipulated. Anyway, here's the point. So, other man, I'm careful. I don't put my spirit into something unless I feel I'm on reasonably safe ground. But I also know, did I write in this? I now wrote an email to somebody I enjoyed meeting recently, saying you can't change anybody's mind. I'm not in the business of changing anybody's mind. I'm only in the business of reminding them that all these fools with their hyped up messages on social media, well, it's not social media, it's the free press, you can call it. It's a much better phrase. And it's there forever. Homemade, low budget. The budget doesn't matter. Mine's the lowest budget in the world. And I know I've got good things to share because, you see, this position of mine, I almost tested, you could say. So I just happened to spin my conversation, because I'd had a conversation with this person before, and they'd been quite effusive and grown up. I span my take, and straight away you get a kind of anger. It's extraordinary how many people, some people know, who've supposedly died of COVID, in quotation marks. I'm not going to take issue. I cannot. Any intellectual who understands science, statistics, we're here. It's extraordinarily how many old graves there are, like 50, 100-year-old graves, of those dying at 90 or 100. Anyway, the anger. There's only one word, and what's his face? Fraser Nelson of The Spectator, is part of the problem, but I quite respected him for doing something 2 or 3 months ago, where he just put the right word, febrile, into the mix, because it's important. What's happened? Britain, probably other countries in Europe, sure America, is people have lost they no longer value words. Trying to find the right word is actually quite enjoyable. And I'm not an intellectual ponce in practice, but febrile, wonderful word. It's the word. It's not too accusatory or anything like that. So yes, the perfect example of how febrile it's become. Somebody, doesn't matter. You would probably call this somebody, and this is the important bit, that you have kind of this top, there's a layer of these people Now, you can say this is on both sides of the Brexitish argument, or I suppose in America, more or less the Trumpish thing is more or less equivalent in some ways. But you have this element that raise themselves up, and they're so sure of themselves. And they became febrile. The role, the persona they adopted, both sides, and I'm deliberately haven't used the phrase culture wars, and I don't use the word woke. Both sides. They're not me, because they are. They'll say otherwise, but they're drawn in to almost kind of being in charge of what are the right opinions to have. Now, yeah, there's two men. One of them, his friend, not mine. Very much of the intelligent, skeptical. If you use the word skeptical, that'll put various people's hackles up. No, just philosophical. Not so sure about the line being put out in public, and that he was seeing in his small town where he spends a lot of time. 2020. He's of that view, and I've never heard him get really angry or incensed. And then his friend, to my surprise, which is why I let myself relax and kind of almost make a joke about it, some of it, no, basically of the opposite viewpoint, angrily. Now, my friend is not part of the oh, he could be unpleasant, call him gobby, or he's not part of the incensed febrile. But anyway, so you have on both sides. But you see, here's the point. It's only happened 3 or 4 times in the last year. It's upsetting when somebody gets really quite almost aggressive, angry. You're standing there thinking, they could actually punch me. I mean, which is bizarre when his proper friend has exactly the same stance as I do. We've spoken about it many a time. And like me, importantly, he doesn't talk about it. He has moved on. He doesn't deliberately break rules. I don't. I've never walked into a shop without my... Is it here? Oh no, I left it in the van. Oh, perhaps I should have it on to talk into my camera. Oh, I have my bandana that goes up always when required. Even running a girls' riding club. I was there officially working. Horses needed riding. Animal welfare, serious, not a joke. Anyway, to the point. So yeah, it only happens 3 or 4 times in a year. I walked away, spent half an hour. Oh, this is horrible. Now, I'm going to say it's dangerous, but people can get hurt from this kind of thing. And what can you say? Because these two sides, and in fact it's more what happened around Brexit, to be completely honest, in Britain. These two sides did become, I don't think it's the right word to call them divided, but, and it is mainly men, not entirely. Claire Fox is the best example, and actually I have several women friends who are kind of almost mini Claire Foxes in their approach. But they have this huffy, entitled, and they know they are totally right. It comes out in their body language and the way they express themselves. Now, there's the point. The point of actually what I've said is you can't come back from that. But you see, what people forget is there will be something else next year or the year after. Should we retaliate if China takes Taiwan, moves back into Taiwan? There'll be something else. There'll be something else. And these two archetypes, that's all they are, which isn't offensive or insulting, but it's what they are. That's it. They're not going to gently ease back out of this persona. And of course, the right word to use, although it's been so perverted, is identity. That's their identity. They have got the power. Sorry, everybody, the information is almost all useless, of the internet. They can just look up anything like that. They can quote something into you, and both sides. Once again, and it wasn't quite this specific. It wasn't quite so much of a battle. And I don't battle, but I do have several friends who I know who are totally meek people. Never. They're actually quite cowardly people in reality, but they've taken their stance against any restrictions right from the beginning, and any medical procedures. Their stance is angrily put. Or they put it in a febrile way. You can't come back from that. So there are those idiots who will characterise things as, oh well, you have your Brexity lot who are anti-vax. That's not true. There are some people who, I believe Mr. Farage is, some people who made their names or developed their online portals through that political phase in Britain, and they've kind of jumped on this. They probably don't even know they're doing it, but they've jumped on this as the next bandwagon. But there'll be another one. There'll be the next thing. And now this has become, now I never use the phrase the new normal, but I can't see how. Think about it. And you have two camps, and they are these, unfortunately nobody knows what this one means anymore. It's a great phrase. Type A males. Almost, 90%. Yes, we know there are some well-known characters, women characters who are dissenters online. They all follow this sort of shockish, jockish model. So what? It's crass. We're not going to use the word vulgar because that's an outdated word that would have one painted as an elitist. It's just silly. It achieves nothing. Well, it's achieved this, in part. I think, though, unfortunately, what has also achieved this, two camps, I'm not going to call them divided, it's just their personas, their identities they've gradually adopted over the last 3 or 4 years. And it's through the sort of not very good. The reality is most of Brexit, I'm sorry, most of it did arise from people who are not racists. My best mate, who happens to be brown, we talk about this. One of his many years better mates, he jokes about it all the time, how we know he's not racist. We know that. And yet, he just can't help putting things in racial terms regularly in respect of the immigrants or the this or the that. And is the net effect to be racist as a member of a community and bring anybody with you? Probably not. But it is still ignorance. It's just ignorant talk. But anyway, the majority, the ones that matter, the ones, somebody said, I wrote it in the weblog, which is ended now, because this ends it. This ends it. Wasn't planning to make six, 7 videos anyway. Somebody said, yeah, oh yeah, I knew it was. My South African friend, who's as mellow and mild and cowardly and religious as can be. The most cowardly person I know. Which I've said to his face many a time. He's alright though. Because he's religious, you can have some philosophical talk with him. Yeah, he talked of civil war. Yes, but it's only going to be, if there is a civil war, it's only going to be these two groups. And the bizarre thing is they're actually quite similar. The people like me who just want peace and to muddle through and find some just about tolerable middle ground, I tolerate it all. I've got no problems with anything. Except for one thing, one little country that won't let me drive through it. That's the first time something's go along which has actually affected me, really. Anyway, gets the point. Yeah, so you have these two groups, they're sort of top, or the most, well, arrogant, I'm afraid, is the word, but they are the most certain, clever dick, absolutely sure of themselves, because they're also so good at looking something up on their smartphone, and like they pull out their data. You look at this, you look at, and they've risen to this, they've risen to their role. They're almost protectors of humanity, which they're not, because if they were, they'd say, even if you're stuck having to be close in light of sight to your jalopy, walk 3 miles every day. That would be the first sentence, always, if they cared, and if they had a brain. Yeah, because that's what all the science actually says. No, it's all something else. Yeah, but they win. You can't fight them, because they're generally well off, of course, as well. They generally do drive these kind of tank modern, this American aesthetic of the tough guy and the pickup, the big fancy, expensive pickup with power steering and all of this. Yeah, you can't beat them. They're there. The only way to beat them, I call them the bullnecks. The only way that you ever have been able to beat that is by satire. And most societies can't do satire anymore. It's the only way you can beat them. Not that it should even be a battle. Satire develops enlightenment thought. Full stop. Right, okay, I only meant to do this for 3 minutes. But yes, forget all these clever words, forget me trying to look like I'm some bloody modern day, I don't know, Montaigne mixed with, is it Job? I don't know. I'm usually quite good on some of that stuff, but it doesn't matter. That's the point. It doesn't matter. We are without any doubt in a post-sane rhetorical phase of society, in which case I'm obsolete, which I accept entirely. But I probably will live longer because I'm going to carry on with my healthy approach to life. Full stop. Not that there's any point, because there's basically hardly nobody to talk with. So I'm more than happy speaking with myself. So, yes. But all that matters is, so I, 3 or 4 hours ago, have a little bit of distress inside. Should I have, well, with my friend, well, I've been speaking with him like that all the time. And yet, okay, I'd made an assumption that his friend would be relaxed, and after all, he made a big point of shaking hands, offering his hand, demanding his hand to be shook. And then they always want to talk about the jab, my private business. And if it's made law, I wouldn't even bother fighting a legal case. But, which it won't be, but in Britain, can't be due to ECHR and mixture of that and common law. Can't be. And anyway, the government accept, quite rightly, 5%, 10% don't get jabbed. It's not the end of the world. They actually accept that. Yeah. So, personally, not hurt, not aggressed, just, well, slightly worried. But I know what the answer is into that situation to say to people, and it's not naive, because this has gone on a couple of years nearly, and it's probably going to go on a year or two more. But also, there's the next thing. That's the thing. People need to be reminded. Mister stood there, almost wishing a Barney. You have your vote, I have mine. That's the answer. And it really is. It's the proper answer to everything.